Welcome and thank you again for tuning in to Sharon Kelly Speaks. Today I'm going to talk about exactly who Sharon Kelly is. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had lots of challenges as a young person. When I was born, I lived with my mother and my grandparents. My mother was 18 when she had me. She moved away and I continued to live with my grandparents. After a certain period of time, I ended up moving with my mother, and it was at that time that I first experienced what rejection truly felt like. At that time, was her boyfriend had told her that either I go or we both go, and she asked me if I wanted to go stay with a relative. It was at that time that my journey began, where I was be moved from place to place. I moved around from several relatives' homes. I experienced going through sexual abuse, and that was from the ages of 6 to about 9 years old. About 9 and a half, one of my relatives, my aunt and uncle, ended up taking me in and did not adopt me, but took over guardianship of me. And I lived there. I went to counseling, and I remember I dreaded going to counseling. I was still very angry at my mom. I was angry that I didn't have my father. Although my aunt and uncle embraced me as their own, for me it wasn't the same because I knew they weren't my parents. I pretended as though they were. I pretended that my cousins were my siblings, but I knew inside that they were not. And although they were family, it just, for me at that time, it just really wasn't enough for me. I wanted more. I wanted my mother. I ended up moving out of that home due to just complete disrespect on my part. And as I moved out, I continued the journey of moving from home to home until I had graduated high school. When I graduated high school, I went to college, and my first year of college, I got pregnant. I got married to my boyfriend at that time, who was my child's father. I got married at the age of 19. We were married for a total of 16 years. We have 4 children together. The marriage ended in divorce due to adultery, and many times people will think that when the relationship ends in adultery, that it's just the person's fault that committed the adultery that the marriage ended. Although that was ultimately the reason why the marriage ended, that was not the many reasons that built up to that point. There were many things that I did. I was not respectful at all. I did not know how to love. I didn't know how to love myself. I was very broken. When we went into the marriage, we were both broken people. I was broken for a very long time in the marriage. I definitely was not the woman that God had called me to be a wife. I was not wife material. I don't believe that when people are broken and hurt that they should even enter into relationships, and that was where I was. As after the divorce had transpired, I was able to reflect on some things and actually go back to my former spouse and apologize for the things that I had done to contribute to the divorce. Divorce is an awful thing. It was awful for me. I felt like the one thing that I did have and desired was a family, and it was taken away from me. And my children had to endure that my children had to endure the pain. I was feeling one level of pain, and my children were feeling something else. I did go through counseling through the divorce. My children went through counseling through the divorce. And I remember my counselor saying to us, saying to me that, oh yeah, the children are ready. I think they're going to do well. I think they're going to handle it well. And they didn't. They didn't. They handled it not as well as I thought they would. I thought because they saw a lot of the dysfunction that they would be okay with it, that they would be glad for it, and it would be freedom from them from being from a dysfunctional situation, and it actually was not. Many people ask me, well, do you regret the divorce? I don't. I don't regret the divorce. I regret the paths that I chose in life that ultimately caused me to be in a situation where divorce had to even be an option. I wish that I had made some different choices earlier on in life. But I am thankful to God for the journey, because it taught me so much. It taught me now that that I'm older and more seasoned in Christ. It's taught me forgiveness. It's taught me more things about my children than maybe I wouldn't have experienced before. After I divorced, I didn't think I would remarry. I was in church one day, and someone came to me and said, "I don't want you to close the option of marriage. I want you to pray and allow God to lead you and direct you. Don't try to take over and say that you don't want marriage because of what just happened in yours." It was difficult for me to lay that down at God's feet, because to me that was another opportunity for me to give my heart to somebody else to hurt me, and I didn't want to risk it. I was scared, but because I trust God, I laid it down. I laid it down at God's feet, and I said, "Okay, Lord, if it's meant for me to be in another relationship, it's meant for me to marry, then you send the person." I remember writing down on a piece of paper what my expectations were, and prayed about it, and God did do that. He actually sent me everything that I had prayed for and more. I am since remarried, so I have 4 children. My husband has a son who's my stepson, and together we have a little girl. I'm blessed. I really am. Even though my journey has been hard, I'm thankful for the place where I came back to Christ, because there was a period of time where I was backslidden, and I was angry, and I was bitter at my mother for years. And I remember going to counseling about it, and the counselor said to me, "You're never going to be free until you forgive her. You're never going to be free until you forgive her." And I remember thinking, man, if I forgive her, then it's kind of like I'm letting her off the hook. Once I started praying and asking God to deal with me in that area, I was able to forgive her. I was able to forgive who is now my stepfather, and still love them in spite of the journey, knowing that the journey actually made me who I am today. I don't have any sadness when I think about it. I know that God is using my journey to bless someone else, to help someone else out of it. There's so many ways that I could have went. I remember people saying that, "Oh, you're not going to amount to anything. You're not going to be anything. You're gonna get pregnant in high school. You're not going to do well for yourself." And I remember believing that. I remember believing, because of my life not being the way that I had envisioned in my head it should be, and the way that I had saw other people be. I remember believing that I wasn't going to be anything. But God said who I was going to be. And when I started believing that, and I started knowing that I was fearfully, wonderfully made in Christ, I started to look to Him and trust Him and love my mother in spite of what happened. Me and my mother have a great relationship. I have a good relationship with my stepfather. I don't regret my journey because of the challenges that I had. I was able to go back to my former spouse and apologize and forgive him for what he had done in the marriage. I know that if it wasn't for Christ, I know that if I had not have stopped at my aunt and uncles, who ended up having legal guardianship over me, and they had not have introduced me to the Lord, I know that I would not be who I am today. I would not be so grounded in Christ as I am. I would not probably be so forgiving. I probably would be a very resentful person, very angry. I would be angry at men and women. It would not be a good situation. But because of that, I was able to give life another chance and trust Jesus. And now I use what I went through to bless other people, and hope that what I say and what I do will encourage others. I hope that I am able to be an example to my children as they go through life and they go through different challenges, that they're able to say that, hey, my mom went through a lot. And if my mom went through that and she's able to hold her head up high and still keep walking and still keep having faith and still keep trusting, then I can do that too. And the message to you today is to know that no matter what your story is, no matter what you went through, God is able. God is there. God will help you through it, no matter what it looks like, no matter what people tell you it's going to turn like. People will say to you what your life is going to turn out like based on their level of faith, based on their upbringing, based on what they are comfortable with, based on their experiences. But you don't have to craft your life that way. You craft your life according to what you know that God is able to do in you. Don't let your circumstances, don't let your past, don't let other people's choices that they made for you determine who you're going to be. Let Jesus determine that for you. You know what your dreams are, you know what your desires are, and you reach for those things. You let your journey be your testimony. This is Lessons Learned, and I'm Sharon Kelly. And thank you again for tuning in. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And I look forward to continuing to talk to you. I will continue to talk more in depth about the different things that I went over today, about the things that I experienced in my life. And hopefully it will be a blessing to you. Be blessed.